Hi everybody, Dan Illman here, taking a look at one of the feature races at beautiful Del Mar on Saturday. Let's throw up the field for the California Dreamin Stakes. To be carded as race number 9. We're going 1 mile and a 16th, Cal-bred or sired 3-year-olds and up. And it's nice to see a big field going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf. 11 entered this race, including none above the law, who is just a rock-solid old gray gelding. Won last time out on dirt in the Bertrando at Los Alamitos, but is plenty capable on the turf, and he's sort of a mid-pack late runner that would benefit from a hot pace, and it looks like he's going to get it. If our friends at Timeform US are right, we check out the Timeform US pace projector. It's expected to be a fast pace, and why not? There are several stretch-out sprinters in this race that might be keyed up and ready to go as they get back around 2 turns. The number 2, Catalina Eddy, the number 3, especially Disco Tribute. That horse was fast enough to compete in and win a mixed breed race going 1,000 yards at Los Alamitos back in February. The 6 proof he rides. All those horses are stretching out, and that pace should be solid and set things up very nicely for the mid-packers or the late kickers. We'll start things off with the number 1, On the Whim, who's stretching out in distance, but one that might be able to settle back a bit and benefit if the pace is fast. He has won going sprint to route in the past. The one time he went 2 turns on the turf was a first level allowance against Calbreds at Santa Anita, and he went right to the lead that day and showed that 1 mile was not a problem. Now I think he's going to be comfortable from off of the pace, and I think he was in against some pretty tough open first level allowance runners going down the hill in his last 2 races. He didn't make an impression, but it's worth noting that the 4th place finisher from his last race came back to win an open 1X at Del Mar with a 95 Beyer speed figure. He's faced some good horses. He's lightly raced with a lot of upside potential. He's got the tactical speed and a good inside post to work out a pace tracking ground saving trip, and he should be a fairly square price on the tote. The number 2 is Catalina Eddy. He's expected to be one of the pace players, adding blinkers in his second start off of a little bit of a layoff. This is another horse that has succeeded going 2 turns in the past, winning going sprint to route last year, a first level allowance for Calbreds. Last time out they ran him 6 furlongs and he didn't show his normal early speed. He tried to get into it with a 3-wide bid on the turn, flattened out just a bit in the late stages, only beaten half length while finishing 6th in a big blanket finish. The 3rd place finisher came back to run 2nd behind none above the law in the Bertrando Stakes on dirt with a 93 Beyer speed figure. Catalina Eddy figures to be forwardly placed with the blinkers. I watched his most recent work, a stamina building 3/4 drill with blinkers on, and he looked very comfortable. The 3 is Disco Tribute, and we're going to go back to Disco Tribute's win 2 starts back, an open first level allowance over the Tapeta going 3/4 of a mile at Golden Gate Fields. He sat right off the leaders, and he's going to get up in the shadow of the wire to win by a half length, beating 2 next out winners. 3 weeks after this race, he returned on dirt at Los Alamitos in an open starter allowance, showed good early speed, battled for the lead, and he fought hard all the way down to the wire. He's capable on all 3 surfaces. He should show some speed. It's interesting that they're taking the blinkers off, maybe to try to get him to relax a little bit in the early part of these races, because at 1 mile or over, that could be a bit of an issue for Disco Tribute, because he's going to be facing other speeds, and they've really kept him going shorter for most of his career. Perhaps the connections have been worried about his ability to get a distance of ground. Not so with the number 4, Pasarando, who scored last time out for a 62,500 claiming option on dirt at Pleasanton. That race was 1 mile and 70 yards. He sat back off the pace and fired on home to win nicely. He finished behind several of these horses in the Crystal Water on turf 2 starts back. That was kind of a slow-paced race, however, and he was hung wide around both turns. That's really not an ideal trip when the fractions are slow. This horse occasionally pops big races. His best races, however, have come on synthetic and dirt. I think he gets a setup. I think he's somewhat interesting at a price. He needs to prove that he can step as well on turf as he can on the main track. The 5 is Coalinga Road, another horse going dirt to turf. He was 3rd in a first level allowance at Santa Anita, a well-beaten 3rd last time out on the dirt. I think he's better on the turf. His race 2 starts back in the Crystal Water, again sort of sitting in the second flight behind a moderate pace, giving an even finish at a big price. He's run pretty well against Calbred Stakes Company in the past, however, on dirt in the Bertrando last year, in the Crystal Water finishing 2nd, and he actually won the Unusual Heat Turf Classic way back in 2023. He has wonderful tactical speed. He can put the jockey wherever the jock wants to be, and I think a comfortable trip is coming for Coalinga Road, who's earned some solid speed figures on turf this year. Proof He Rides is up next, and we're going to take a look at his most recent start. This is a quarter starter allowance, going the 6.5 straight course at Santa Anita. Again, he was close to the pace, but this pace was pretty solid. It heated up the second quarter. He makes the lead in the stretch, and he's just going to get beat a dirty nose as the favorite. He's going to have to stretch out to a mile, and I think that's a bit of a question. He does draw outside some of the other speeds, and he has shown the ability to sit sprinting, so maybe he won't be cooked up in a speed duel, but he's likely to be chasing legitimate fractions, and I'm not sure if that's going to help him when the closers come calling in the stretch. He is in very good form, having hit the board in his last 6 races. The 7 is None Above the Law. None Above the Law ran in the Crystal Water 2 starts back on the turf. He really didn't fire his best shot that day at 40-1. He sort of saved ground in mid-pack, but again, the pace really wasn't there for him. The winner, Kings River Knight, who was odds-on as one of the better Calbred turf horses we've seen in a long time, controlled the pace up front, and there was no catching him in that scenario. None Above the Law showed he could still run in his most recent start, that being the Bertrando, where he sat off the pace, and he fired on home to pay $20. He has plenty of races good enough to win this, and None Above the Law should get the right setup. Carmelita's Man is up next. This horse ran in a tough second-level open allowance last time out at Santa Anita, and now will be making his 3rd start off of a short layoff, perhaps getting ready to round himself back into form. Another horse that ran pretty well in the Crystal Water, considering it wasn't a race that had a ton of pace, and he was staying on to finish 5th, passing some tired horses in the stretch. Another one with a little bit of back class, and most importantly, a very good running style for this race. He's another you can consider at a price. The 9 is Ooh Babe, who's listed as a gelding for the first time for trainer Richard Baltus, and he's coming into this race off a little bit of a layoff. They tried him in the Crystal Water last time out, and he was the one doing the dirty work, pushing Kings River Knight early through those moderate fractions. No real excuse for Ooh Babe, who got a little bit tired in the stretch, but perhaps this time around, he's going to let others go out and battle for the lead. He can sit back in the 2nd or 3rd flight and get the jump on the true closers. A lot of minor awards on his page. He's hit the board in 14 of 17 starts, but 7 seconds, 5 thirds. Perhaps there's a new gelding he'll perk up. And I think his last race is a little better than it looks because, again, he was pushing a very sharp horse and doing some work before tiring. I think Old Pal is a very logical contender in this race. He ran 3rd last time out in the Crystal Water, and he tried to rally from far back off of that slow pace, and he was staying on at the end under Mike Smith to finish 3rd. That race snapped a mini 2-race winning streak, and one of those wins was in the Snow Chief going a mile and an eighth when he kicked them down in the stretch. You can make the argument he is the best stone closer in this race. He's likely going to get a setup according to Timeform US, and I think there's even bigger and better yet to come for Old Pal after only 6 starts. I think a forward move is likely in the offering, considering a fast pace and if he gets a clean trip. Barely Funchual was 61-1 against Kings River Knight in the Crystal Water, and he finished ahead of 6 of these. Let's watch the stretch run. Barely Functional did get a perfect trip in here, sitting the pocket in behind Kings River Knight, getting to the outside in the stretch. He's going to go by Ooh Babe, who is prompting the pace and is backing up. You'll see Old Pal get into the picture to run 3rd. Barely Funchual, unfortunately for him, draws post 11 in here, and it's unlikely he can work out a similar trip as last time, but it's nice to know that he's in pretty good form and he's going to be a good price yet again. It's up to Mario Gutierrez to work out a trip this time from the far outside post, because last time from the rail, that was a dream run. Let's take a look at my top selection. This is a wide open race. I really want to look for a little bit of a price in here, and I wonder if maybe Ooh Babe is the kind of horse that can take a slight step forward as a new gelding, being rated a little bit more off of the pace. I do think Old Pal is going to run very well kicking in the stretch. You got to respect the old timer, None Above the Law, but I'm going to give Ooh Babe a chance. I think he's going to be at least 10-1 in here, and I'd like to play him around those odds in a race that doesn't feature Kings River Knight. Good edition of the California Dreamin at Del Mar on Saturday. Good luck.